not because it is easy, but because it is the only way to find the power within yourself that no one else can give you. The man who seeks the crowd will always be one of the crowd, but the man who dares to walk alone will likely find himself in places others never dreamed of. I remember vividly the early days of my own journey. I was ridiculed, doubted, even by those closest to me. Hill, they said, you dream too big. But I knew something they didn't. No one ever changed the world by asking for permission. When you set out on the path toward your definite major purpose, the first thing the universe does is test your courage by separating you from the crowd. Now you see, greatness does not live in comfort. It thrives in solitude. When you are alone, you can hear your own voice. You can think your own thoughts, and it is there in the silence that your vision becomes clear. That is where desire turns into faith, and faith into an unstoppable force. You must understand, approval is the enemy of destiny. If you live for applause, you will die in obscurity. The world will not always clap for your dreams. It may laugh, it may scorn, it may ignore, but if you persist, it will one day listen. When I wrote Think and Grow Rich, the world was not waiting for me, but I wrote it anyway, alone, with faith as my only friend. When you walk alone, you find out who you are. You will meet your fears on that path. They will whisper lies. You will hear echoes of doubt. Oh, but keep walking, because each step strips away the false and strengthens the real. And then something strange happens. The ones who once left will lean in. The doubters will become admirers. Admirers, not because you begged, but because you built. Not because you followed, but because you led. Ellie, understand this. Every great soul walked alone before the world followed. Christ in the wilderness, Edison in his lab, Lincoln in his sorrow. They did not wait for company. They created history. So today, I dare you to walk alone, to stand for something so true, so bold, that it frightens the masses. Ellie, because once you have walked the lonely road of purpose, you will never again settle for the sidewalk of comfort. Ella, walk alone and watch the world follow. Greatness, my friend, has never traveled in crowds. It never rode the carriage of comfort, nor did it dwell in the familiar towns of popularity. No, greatness prefers the steep hills, the winding trails, the lonely ridges where only the daring dare to tread. When you set your eyes on a purpose higher than mere survival, when you desire to create, to build, to lead, and to transform, you must be prepared to leave behind the safety of the many. The masses seek security, but those who achieve greatness choose vision over validation. Let me tell you something that most will never admit. The crowd is afraid. It is afraid of change, afraid of risk, afraid of standing alone, because standing alone means taking responsibility. It means confronting one's own doubts, one's own weaknesses, one's own dreams. But the individual who steps off the well-worn road, the one who says, I will not be like everyone else, that person begins a different kind of journey. A lonely journey, yes, but one lit by the fire of purpose, That fire does not burn in everyone, only in those brave enough to be misunderstood, to be judged, to be alone. The great mountain of success has but a narrow trail. You will not find crowds climbing to its summit. You will not hear cheering at the base. But you will find echoes, echoes of those who dared before you. And if you listen closely, you'll hear them whisper, "Keep going." Ali, for every man who has reached the heights, whether it be Carnegie, Ford, or Edison, had to first endure the isolation that comes when you leave behind what is average and aim for what is possible. Zilly, yes, the path to greatness is narrow. And yes, it is often walked alone, but it is only on this path that you discover not what the world wants from you, but what you truly, one of the most dangerous prisons a man can live in. 2 is the need for approval. It is a silent jailer. It places invisible chains on your ambition. And it robs you of the boldness required to fulfill your destiny. Dole, understand this. If you are constantly chasing the applause of others, you will forever be adjusting your sails to the winds of their opinion. But a man with purpose does not wait for applause. He moves, even when there is only silence. Let me ask you, did Edison ask the world if it was ready before he created the light bulb? Did the Wright brothers seek popular opinion before they dared to fly? No. They were called foolish, reckless, dreamers. But they knew something the crowd didn't. Destiny does not ask for permission. It demands obedience, Aslavel. In my own life, I watched many people with enormous potential become paralyzed by the need to be liked. They delayed their decisions, softened their dreams, and compromised their truth, all in hopes of being accepted. And in doing so, they sacrificed their calling. Well, the truth is, the more you grow, the less you will be understood. The more focused you become, the more others will question your direction. But that's not a sign of failure. It's proof you're on the right track. Because destiny is not given to the agreeable, it is given to the courageous. Ellie, when I sat alone at my desk, writing the early pages of Think and Grow Rich, I knew most people would not understand what I was building, but I wasn't writing it for approval. I was writing it because I believed in the power of the human mind. I believed in purpose, and that belief was enough. You must decide, will you live for likes or will you live for legacy? One disappears with time. The other endures forever. So if you feel resistance from the crowd, don't panic. If you are being doubted, dismissed, or even mocked, smile. You are walking away from approval and walking directly toward your destiny. Solitude, misunderstood by many, is not loneliness. It is the birthplace of vision. It is in the silence, when the noise of the world fades, that a man begins to hear himself, his true thoughts, his deepest desires, and the voice of his higher self that is so often drowned in the chaos of daily life. Do not fear being alone, embrace it, because it is in solitude that clarity is born. Clarity about who you are, why you're here, and what you must do. The greatest decisions of my life were made when I was alone, not when I was surrounded by noise, opinions, or applause. When I shut the door to the world, I opened the door to myself. And in the quiet, your mind begins to organize itself. Confusion melts. Doubt dissolves. You begin to see your path not through the eyes of fear, but through the lens of purpose. Your goals sharpen. Your reasons deepen. You become anchored not to the shifting winds of public approval, but to the firm foundation of inner conviction. Zerlo and strength, true strength, is forged in this very solitude. Not the strength to lift, but the strength to endure, to persist, to believe when no one else does. It's easy to be bold when the crowd is cheering, but the man who can be bold when no one is watching, that man is unstoppable. There were times in my journey when the only companion I had was my belief in an idea, a dream, a principle. And in that stillness, I met my true self, not the one the world expected, but the one I was born to become. Oh, and what comes next is perhaps the greatest gift of solitude. Purpose. You do not find your purpose by polling the masses. You find it by going within, by listening, by reflecting. And once you find it, you no longer need to be pushed. You become pulled. Purpose becomes your engine, your compass. The man who finds clarity in solitude walks differently. He speaks with certainty. He moves with confidence because he is not echoing the crowd. He is following truth, and truth often speaks in whispers. Only the quiet mind can hear. When you begin the journey toward your vision, something remarkable happens. You start to see people clearly, not through the lens of shared comfort or common habits, but through the fire of your growth. Because when you choose to walk alone, not everyone will follow. And that's the point. You see, as long as you remain where it's safe, predictable, and ordinary, you'll be surrounded by smiles. But the moment you step forward toward a life of purpose, risk, and elevation, watch carefully. Faces will change. Conversations will shift. Silence will grow louder. This is not rejection. It is revelation. The walk alone strips away the illusion. It tests the weight of every relationship in your life. Some will fall off without a word. Others will criticize, disguise their envy as advice, or even laugh at your ambition. Let them, because in that moment they are showing you exactly who they are, but don't despair. For just as some disappear, others will emerge. So those who truly believe in you, who aren't threatened by your growth, who don't need you to shrink for them to feel secure, those are your true allies, and they are rare. But you will never find them by staying hidden in the crowd. Ellie, I remember men I once called friends who praised me when I played it small, but withdrew when I chose to build something greater. Their departure was painful, but it was necessary, because you cannot rise while clinging to those who are committed to crawling. Wait, your purpose is like a lighthouse. It reveals who is sailing with you, and who was only standing nearby while the waters were calm. The storms of solitude will show you the loyal from the lazy, the builders from the talkers, the faithful from the fearful. Ellie, when you walk alone, you give others a choice, grow with you or fade away, and let halved, laved, Rolini. Look back through the corridors of history, and you'll see a truth so consistent it demands attention. Every soul who shaped the world was first required to walk alone. Before the world admired them, it ignored them. Before it celebrated them, it condemned them. That is the price of greatness. The solitude before the spotlight. Moses walked the desert before he led a nation. Christ wandered the wilderness before he changed the course of humanity. Abraham Lincoln sat in the dark weight of doubt, misunderstood and criticized before he became the voice of a divided nation's conscience. These men weren't accepted first, they were isolated, they weren't praised first, they were persecuted. And yet they endured. And why? Because deep within them was a fire, a purpose greater than comfort, louder than criticism, and more real than fear. That fire demanded movement, even when no one else believed. It is always the soul that walks alone that ultimately shows others the way. When I studied the lives of these individuals, I discovered a common law of success. The crowd follows only after proof, but the great act on belief. They do not need a cheering section to start. They only need a vision and the courage to act on it. The applause comes later. The world joins only after the work has been done. LA, even in my own life, before Think and Grow Rich became a cornerstone of achievement philosophy, it was just paper and ink. There was no applause. There were no headlines, only the whisper of a burning idea and the conviction to pursue it, no matter the cost. And the irony is, once the world begins to follow, it forgets that you were once walking alone. They celebrate the result, but overlook the resolve. They enjoy the fruit, but forget the roots. That's why the path is often so hard, because it must be walked without assurance. But know this, every step you take in faith, even in solitude, builds the bridge others will one day cross. LA? So when you feel the absence of company, remember, you are not behind, you are ahead. You are doing what every great soul did before greatness arrived. You're preparing the path, you're shaping the vision, and you are proving, not to the world, and you are proving, none to world, but to yourself, that you are worthy of the call placed upon your life. There is something permanent that happens to a man when he walks the road of purpose alone. It changes his appetite. It rewires his spirit. The man who has tasted the strength that comes from walking through fire, from facing his doubts and fears in silence, will never again be satisfied with shallow comforts or hollow praise. Comfort becomes unbearable once you've known the clarity of purpose, because comfort offers safety, but it demands that you shrink. Purpose, on the other hand, demands your entire soul, but in return, it gives you expansion, fulfillment, and a power that no man or system can take away. Years, I remember when I stood at the edge of my greatest decision, whether to retreat into a life of predictable security or push forward into the unknown with nothing but my vision in hand. The easy choice was to step back. The world offered me safety, approval, and rest, but my soul would not let me settle. I had already walked too far on the path of purpose. I had already felt its pull. Once you've walked that road, you see, once you've walked that road, where each step is driven by conviction, not comfort, there's no going back. You begin to see ordinary life for what it is, a shadow of what could be. The small talk, the distractions, the superficial dreams, they no longer satisfy you. Devoltors, not because you're better than others, but because your soul has tasted something deeper. Ellie, you've stood alone with your vision. You've cried in silence. You've built when no one believed. And that process has carved into you a resilience that no paycheck or applause could ever replicate. Ali, the sidewalk of comfort may be crowded, but it leads nowhere new. It circles the same patterns, rewards the same behaviors, and punishes anything that dares to rise above average. But the lonely road of purpose, it leads upward, not easily, not quickly, but undeniably. Oh, and those who walk it even just once become addicted to progress, to growth, to becoming more than they were yesterday. They cannot settle. They will not shrink because they have seen what is possible. And once you see it, you cannot unsee it. Ellie, you now walk with a different rhythm. You arise earlier. You speak with intention. You choose discomfort over distraction because you're no longer walking for pleasure. You're walking for purpose, and that purpose burns brighter than any temporary comfort ever could. Meiosis. When I tell you to walk alone, I do not mean to become a recluse or abandon the world. I mean something far deeper. I mean step away from the noise long enough to hear your own voice. I mean create the space to become not just what the world expects, but what your soul requires. Walking alone is not isolation. It is incubation. It is the sacred period where you are not have avlect, haved, cav, led, had.